Oh, what a mess. This is Neil Schneider from Meant to Be Seen. Welcome back to my basement. We've got a loaded show today. I'm sorry I had to take some family time off, but I'm back, so enjoy. So here we go for today. First off, big major news item, Vireio Perception Alpha 3, readily available on mtbs3d.com. This is now something to understand with the Vireio Perception drivers. This is free, open source software. The majority of it is open source, but it's all completely free to use. It lets you take existing games and play them in virtual reality form. So when I say virtual reality form, I mean with stereoscopic 3D support, head tracking. We have special VR boost functionality that, in some cases you have, you do have positional tracking. In one case at least, we're having walking room experiences. We really want to go far with this. Now, this particular release of Vireio Perception, it's an Alpha 3 release. We're building up to something, okay? So we've added some new functionality. We've added, some, call it, a foundation, if you will, to lead to something else, okay? So let me describe what's been done. Now, first off, this is something completely new. We've added a Vireio Cinema mode. So what's Vireio Cinema mode? Well, one of the benefits of using a top-of-the-line virtual reality head-mounted display is you've got a lot of field of view. And if with the right software, you could be wearing a head-mount display and the illusion could be that you're sitting in front of a giant projection screen or a big screen TV. So a new feature that we've added to Vireio Perception is that you could create your own game profiles and play video games on the big screen in VR. More than that, you can actually design the theater to look the way you like. Now, there's 3 levels. Okay, level 1 is just traditional 2D play. It's the easiest of them all. You can play your choice of game, again, on the big screen. Next level up is stereoscopic 3D support. This is more complex. Not everyone can create profiles for this. Similar idea. You're playing the game on the big screen, but you have those stereoscopic 3D effects where things look really deep or they seem to be coming out at you. Really exciting stuff. And then the final version is a full immersion mode where, of course, you could play in 3D on the big screen, but, you could also play in true virtual reality mode as well. So that's really what we ultimately want. This is setting the foundation for things to come. Another big feature is we've been able to add HTC Vive controller support. So this is actually more, in full immersion mode, of course, this is something that people are going to be able to use. But for now, right away, they're going to be able to benefit as like a mouse control, when playing games on the big screen. So this is a proof of concept, but a lot of interesting things to come from this. Again, we're laying down a foundation. There's also been a couple additional game profiles, like DirectX 11 game profiles. There's work to be done, but again, the future we're working towards is so that gamers could create their own detailed profiles. Right now, we're laying down the foundation for really amazing things to come. Now, another key benefit, just made some notes for myself here. Oh yeah, very important. There's now a very detailed manual for Vireio Perception, so read the manual to see what you can and can't do. Also, I highlighted HTC Vive Control. Just so you know, when Oculus Touch comes around the bend, we've also got Leap Motion planned, Leap Motion support planned. So there are going to be additional, control mechanisms or gesture mechanisms added to Vireio Perception as they become available. Now, what do we have to look forward to in the next release? So this is something that's planned during the autumn or towards the end of autumn. Everyone's been waiting for it. Thanks so much for your patience. Is DX9 support. DX9 support is about 80% done. Okay, so this is something that's being developed in parallel. I'd say it's about 80% done. So we're pretty close there to giving you that, bringing back that Skyrim experience like never seen before. And of course, we want to add the detailed profile creation, so people could add their own games with full VR support, and using the Aquilinus toolset that Dennis has developed. Really amazing stuff. So we're hoping this will all be ready by autumn, end of autumn. So this is all laying down some groundwork, okay? So anyway, so Vireio Perception Alpha 3 is readily available at mtbs3d.com. We hope you like what you see. Great things to come. Now, next, Immersed. Okay, if you haven't marked your calendars yet, you should. October 16th to 18th at the Ontario Science Centre. This is going to be a huge event. We're anticipating between 8,000 and 9,000 people in attendance. This is on the consumer side of things. Again, we're partnered with the Ontario Science Centre. We're really excited about this. We want people to see all kinds of experiences with virtual and augmented reality. We're going to be announcing more exhibitors soon. The speaker list, we're quickly approaching 40 speakers. Now, this is on the professional side of things. I'll give you just some sample names. Our opening keynote, Daryl Sartain. He's Director and Worldwide Head of Virtual Reality and Displays for the Radeon Technology Group at Advanced Micro Devices. Another speaker who I personally haven't seen before is John Scragg. He's experienced design and architect for Autodesk. Autodesk is taking, obviously, an interest in virtual reality. He's going to be talking about their work pertaining to enterprise virtual reality. So really interesting stuff. This is a personal favorite of mine. Colonel Kevin Maston, retired. He's a former F-15 pilot. I joke that maybe he'll bring his airplane to the Science Center. He works with a company called Acomb Ostendorf and Associates, or AO&A, and they specialize in theme parks and immersion. Really interesting stuff because, when we think, or when our markets largely been talking about immersive experiences, we've been thinking from the point of view of wearing head-mounted displays or extra gear, but this is really about being immersed in the environment even before you get into the machinery. So really interesting concept, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot of interesting things to share and to talk about. And let's face it, there's nothing cooler than bringing an experienced Air Force F-15 pilot to the Science Center. So we're really excited. This is just a drop in the bucket. Again, we're going to be approaching 40 speakers from all over the world soon. Really excited. Keep in mind, Immersed, half of it is a professional conference. So this is for technology makers, content makers, investors, media, everyone effectively working in the field. And the other side is for consumers. So people that they're interested in learning about virtual reality and immersive tech. We're giving them that opportunity. We're going to have exhibits from all over. We're really excited. There's going to be thousands of people there in Toronto. I mean, all I can say is we're really excited, and it's something that everyone involved with this is very proud of it. So looking forward to seeing you October 16th to 18th at the Ontario Science Centre. Now, just to give you another taste of what's to come at Immersed, our next guest is Ryan Jackson. He's producer at Full Circle Visuals, and Ryan is an award-winning photojournalist based in Edmonton, Alberta. He was actually formerly with the Edmonton Journal, and this is a guy who tremendous experience. He's been working with 360 before this modern VR era, and he's effectively been reinventing his career with virtual reality. And he's going to talk about all the different things he's working on. He's going to show us his really cool camera rig. He builds his own camera rigs. Interesting guy. I'll let him do the talking right after this. Welcome back to my basement. To my immediate left is Ryan Jackson. He's creative director at Full Circle Visuals. Welcome to the program, Ryan.
Thanks, Neil.
Now, you've got a wonderful background even before going into virtual reality cinematography, and you're a fellow Canadian, which is an extra bonus. Tell us about your work at the Edmonton Journal.
Yeah, so I was at the Edmonton Journal for 9 years. Before that, I was at the Edmonton Sun, and I did internships at the Canadian Press and the Ottawa Citizen. So I worked across Canada as a photojournalist for the last 10 years. Basically, I got before photojournalism, I was in electrical engineering and computer science. So I was a big nerd. And while I was in engineering, I was volunteering for the student newspaper. I was getting really into photography, and I was volunteering for the student newspaper. And all my friends were telling me, "You should drop out of engineering and go into photography." And yada yada yada. I actually ended up dropping out of engineering in my 4th year and took photojournalism in Ontario, and was very fortunate to get a bunch of internships and landed a staff job at the Edmonton Journal. So I was there for 9 years, and while I was their main multimedia guy. I did, video. I did stills, video, and also while I was there, I did panoramas. So I've been doing panoramas since I was actually like a teenager. And while I was at the Journal, Flash Panorama and KR Pano added the feature to be able to add audio to 360 panorama stills, which I just loved. And so I started using those for journalism. I would go to events and capture them. Actually, I think the first one I did was actually of a funeral. It was of a memorial service for a girl that had died. And just being able to go to an event, like normally as a photojournalist, you go to an event and you bring back one, zoomed in picture with a long lens. But now I was able to bring back that zoomed in picture, but I was also able to bring back a 360 image of that news event with audio, and people could watch it and feel what it was like to actually be at that place. And so I did that for a number of projects for the Journal, using panoramas for journalism. And then about 5 years ago, I really wanted to figure out how to do 360 video. And I'd seen some 360 videos on the internet, and I really wanted to know how to do it. But there was no instructions online of how to do it. Like, no one was blogging, no one was sharing, there was no tutorials of like, here's step 1, step 2, step 3 of how to do 360. And this really bugged me, because I was just like, how has no one shared this? So I've been blogging. I've been blogging at ryanjackson.ca since like 2002. And so I figured out how to do 360 video. And
that's a big yada yada there. I mean, you went from zero to yada yada.
Yeah. Well, so I figured out the 360, and I basically one day I had this epiphany. I was trying to figure out how they did it. And I had this epiphany one day that if you just had, say 4 video cameras in a circle, and they were each shooting 30 frames per second of video, if you took that 30 frames per second of video and you turned it into stills, you could then take those stills, stitch them into panoramas, and then turn those panoramas into video. So it was very complicated, but it worked. And so, but the thing was that, because I was a full-time photojournalist, I was shooting, politics, sports, you name it, all kinds of news. And so I had this 360 camera, but I needed the right project to use it for it. 360 doesn't work for everything. You can't just show up at a press conference and shoot a 360, because a lot of news, is kind of better told in the frame, with the zoom lens. But there was this world record dodgeball game in 2011 that came up. And the year before, I'd shot a video. The University of Alberta had set the world record for most people playing dodgeball at once. And the video went viral on YouTube. It's probably getting close to 1 million views. And so the next year, my wife was like, well, how are you going to beat last year? And I was like, I'll show you. So I got a bunch of GoPros together, literally used elastic bands and tape to stick them onto a pole, and I got access. The Guinness Book of World Records people had to make an exception to allow me in the game, and basically I shot a 360 video of like 1,000 or 2,000 students throwing dodgeballs at each other. It was just the coolest thing. Cut the video as fast as possible, put it up, and it got picked up by Gizmodo and just went viral. It got like 127,000 views. I think we were doing like 10,000 streams an hour. And so it was just really cool. And the next day, and everyone was like, this is the most amazing thing. So the next day, I blogged about it, because I've always shared my secrets, shared how I do things. And so I blogged, if you Google just like 360 dodgeball Ryan Jackson, you'll find it. And so I wrote a step-by-step tutorial of like, here's the cameras I use, step 1, step 2, step 3, here's the software I use. I wrote the whole workflow, and then so as soon as I posted that, within 2 hours, I got a phone call from a random guy who is like, I can't believe you blogged about that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no one's sharing their secrets of how to do 360. And I'm like, I know, right? Like, no one's telling their secrets. So anyways, he
meant it as a bad thing. Like, oh, you're
he wanted me to take it down. He was kind of like, you should take that down. And we had a great conversation, actually, because he was kind of like, the people who can do this are being secretive about it for good reason. In fact, maybe if I was in their situation, well, I guess I'd be a different kind of person. But the thing is that we had a good conversation about how, all information wants to be free. And he knew that eventually someone was going to share how to do it. But, it was good. He actually kind of offered me a job. Anyways, so after that, I left the blog post up. And over the next few years, I would just get phone calls and emails from people all over the world. It was really cool. Just all over the world, people would call me, and they would just call to chat or just or say like, "Hey, I'm trying to do this too. Can you help?" And it was just really cool to you could feel it. A community was starting to be built because it's quite rare. People who can do this are it's very popular, but it's actually quite niche. There's not a ton of people who are doing this, and so I was able to make a bunch of connections and. Let's flash forward 2 years later, I get a phone call from a company that does dome projection, where they project 360 inside of a dome. And so they wanted me to shoot 360 content for the dome. But the thing was, once you move up to the dome, it's much higher resolution. For the Gear VR or the Oculus is only 4K. But when you blow it up inside of a dome, you're looking at 10K and up. So this presented an awesome challenge because I've been shooting with the GoPros and they're great. And I have a GoPro rig; they have their purpose. But in terms of quality, I've been a photographer for 10 years, and I love I like when your video looks like your stills. I like my video to look like my stills in terms of it looks like I shot it. It looks like how I saw it. And I found with GoPro, I never really got that. It's I guess you could say it's GoPro quality. So 2 years ago, basically built a new rig that used six Panasonic GH4 cameras in a circle. And those cameras are 4K. And just the quality difference between that camera and a GoPro was just night and day. So started shooting content. Actually, we went to Europe. My wife let me take the camera on our European vacation. So we're going through Europe, and I have this heavy backpack on me carrying this giant, it weighed like 30 pounds, the camera. And anyways, so did that. And now it's 2 years later. While I was doing that, I was with the Edmonton Journal still. And 2 years ago, in January of this year, about 7 months ago, Post Media, that's the company that owns the Edmonton Journal, laid off 100 people across the country. And unfortunately, I was one of them. I joke that my name was pulled out of the hat. And so after 9 years at the Journal, I was let go, and which sucked because I loved that job. But at the same time, I had been working on this plan B. I had ambitions to start my own 360 video company one day. And, I had tried doing it while working a full-time job, and I've learned you can't do a startup company while working a full-time job. And so, losing my job sucked, but it presented an opportunity to, because I got a severance package. So it gave me an opportunity to basically just focus on building a company. So so I took, what I'd learned from my years of photojournalism and what I'd learned from the last 2 years of shooting 10K 360 for the Dome, and basically decided to focus, start Full Circle Visuals and focus on the Dome. So we're doing VR. Because obviously that's your biggest audience is VR and 360 videos on YouTube and Facebook. But my kind of end game is the Dome. Essentially, it's the holodeck. I remember I started in engineering. I'm a big nerd. I want the holodeck one day, and to get there, it's all about resolution and it's about sharpness. Because GoPro, if you stick enough GoPros together, you can get 10 or 12K resolution, but it's the quality of those, but you're not really getting the same quality of pixels as you do with a bunch of DSLRs in a circle shooting 10K, right? Because it's not just about the number of pixels, it's also about the glass, it's about the quality of those pixels. And so the yada, yada, yada again, built a new rig. We sold the GH4s, built a new rig that's using the new Sony A6300s, and it's just phenomenal. Like it's like every frame of video is like a still image, and so now basically we're focusing on clients like planetariums and dome productions to be able to create a holodeck. So that's kind of the goal. I hired my first employee, Sam. He's a mechanical engineer. So I'm an engineering dropout who's now employing an engineer. And
you could have saved a lot of money if you went the engineering route. You could have done both jobs.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is that I guess I think about the electrical side. Again, I'm a dropout, so I'll call myself half of an engineer. But basically, I bring the photojournalism and artistic. My dad was an artist, so I bring the artistic side and the photojournalism side. Sam, also a photographer, he brings photography and mechanical engineering, and then I have the electrical and computer science together. And then the third leg is Adam. He's our editor, and he's been a professional editor for like 14 years, and he's really interested in, he brings the theory, the film theory, the art direction side of things to the equation. We find it's really good on a shoot to have the editor there. And so between the three of us, basically we can create anything. And so we've got some clients already, and we're basically trying to diversify ourselves for doing 360 VR, kind of I guess you'd say our short-term stuff, or our cash flow stuff is doing 360 VR, and then our kind of long game is these bigger planetarium productions. And so we're currently working on our first one, and it's just like making a movie. These things take like 2 years to make, and you have to go get funders and all that stuff. But that's kind of your long-term reward, and a lot of people have given me that advice. It's actually really nice when you send an email to someone and you just tell them like, hey, I've started a company. What would you do if you were me, or what advice would you offer? People are so nice. I've gotten so much. Just this morning, I got an email from someone I met at Immersed. I was at the Immersed conference in March, and there's a bunch of contacts I made there, and just people have been giving me really good advice for hey, if you're starting a 360 company, here's what I would do, or here's some things to watch out for, and here's some people you should talk to, and it's and the more you get out there, the more people you meet, just like you.
It's a crazy question for you. I mean, I know you were at the Edmonton Journal for 9 years. Things transition, things change. Obviously, you had to start something new. Obviously, you're going down the path of full circle visuals. You're going the entrepreneur route. You could have, as an established photojournalist, you could have easily, maybe easily is too strong a word, but you could have pursued photojournalism elsewhere. Why was this the right choice to pursue for you?
Well, it's cliche, but there's the line that sometimes it feels like life, you don't choose your life pulls you in a direction. So I'll still be doing photojournalism. I'll still be doing still photography. Existing clients already for still photography. I still do normal video, as I call it, 2D linear video, video production as well. And the thing is that 360 is super hot right now and super popular, but it's also remember I said you have to be diversified. So starting off, that's why I came up with the name Full Circle Visuals, is like we want to have a full circle of services essentially, and that basically want to be the company that you hire. If you have a campaign or something, we're the ones you hire who can do your stills, your video, and your 360. And we're a team so that you go to one shop and we can create a full circle of visuals, if you will, for you. But the thing is that the 360, obviously, I've been doing a lot of market research, a lot of going for coffee with people, talking to people. I spoke at 3 different conferences in the last 6 months, and basically just been asking as many people as I can for, what do you think about the market? Where would you go? The 360 realm, there's a lot of hype. You got to say it's definitely a ton of hype. And, one of the conferences, Immersed, that I was at, 3 separate people at Immersed said, 360 VR is so hot right now. It feels like the 90s all over again in terms of the dot-com bubble. And so, some people, I also like to talk to people who aren't videographers. I like to ask people, I guess we'd call normal people. I don't know. I like to ask people who are outside of the video production space about, hey, what do you think about 360? What have you seen? What's your opinion? I like to hear. Some people love it to death. Other people are like, oh, it makes me sick. We were in an Uber car and I noticed the driver had like a Gear VR. or the driver just casually had mentioned that he got a Gear VR. And I didn't even mention to him that I was shooting 360 content. So I was like, oh, like what do you think about it? And he's like, oh, it's pretty cool, but there's not a lot of content out there yet. And I find that's a trend, actually. I read a lot of articles about, the newest trends in 360, and one common trend is that there's not that they're selling millions of these VR headsets, but then there's not a ton of content out there. So that's kind of what I'm hoping I can fill.
It's not even just about the content. There has to be good content,
Well, that's the thing. Exactly. In the end, the fact that it's in 360 is, I don't want to use the word gimmick. It's the first step, right? But people can only try it on and go, wow, so many times before, then it's like, well, why am I watching this, right? And of course, so once you get past the gimmick of 360, it really has to be have a purpose. It has to have, remember, I'm a photojournalist here, so it all comes down to the story in the end. And and especially with 360, you have to pick your battles, because remember I mentioned how it's not always the best camera for the job. A lot of stories are best told, in a frame. Zoomed in, let me use sports as an example. Sports is all about the long lens, zooming in to show the action. If you're watching 360 on the sidelines, actually the Olympics, I heard there was, I know the Olympics had a 360 camera in the middle of the stadium, and it was cool to look around and kind of get the feeling of atmosphere, like, wow, this is what it's like to be in the stadium. But when the actual, sporting event starts, you don't want to be watching that in 360 because everything's too far away. So, but I could see certainly people making players that let you switch back and forth. So perhaps, and I think that's one of the solutions for storytelling, is you do like a 2D normal linear video that kind of tells the background story and takes you into the story. And then at a point of the story, then you go into 360, and now you're standing there. Now you're in the story. And then perhaps for the next scene, you switch back to 2D or something like that. There's a million different options of how you can do it, but you've really got to find the right. You really got to make decisions about, always ask yourself, why is this in 360? Is 360 the best way to tell this? And sometimes it absolutely is. Sometimes, there's stories or techniques of storytelling that are sometimes better told in 360. Also, when it comes to journalism and context, one upside of the 360 is you are looking all the way around. You're seeing the full context. One thing about the photographer is that the frame, the perfect ideal still image or video frame, it's all about what you don't show, right? You zoom into the action, or you zoom into the most important part of the scene, and you kind of, less is more. The less distracting elements, the stronger the image is. But with 360, it's the opposite. You're seeing everything. So sometimes, remember I said like a boring, say you're at a press conference. Well, a press conference in 360, you have a politician standing at a podium. What's the point of looking around in 360? If you look around, you're seeing the other cameramen, but if you, and all the reporters just scribbling stuff down, it doesn't need to be in 360. It's better to be zoomed in. Other times, it is better to be in. I'll give you an example. I did this is what, five years ago. There was a huge fire. You might have heard Fort McMurray. Fort McMurray had a big fire this year, right? Well, 5 years earlier, Slave Lake, a town of about 5,000, had the same thing happen. Big wildfire hit, wiped out about 500 houses. And so we were trying to get access to be able to film all the burnt down buildings, but they weren't letting any media in. But I had figured out the 360 thing, and so we approached the government and said, hey, you know what? We can do a 360 Street View tour. If you let us in with this 360 camera, we'll do a 360 Street View tour of Slave Lake that then you can show to the people of Slave Lake. And they loved it, because the thing about say I went in and we did a tour of all the burnt down buildings. Well, where do I shoot? I have a camera and I'm trying to shoot in every single direction, but it's burnt around all of me. And if you think from the perspective of the viewer, say the people of Slave Lake or the people of Fort McMurray, who are wanting to see, is my house burnt down? All the people watching that video, they want to control the camera. They want to be able to turn and see, that's my house, versus, so in case of, sometimes with 360, like a street view tour or 360 tour, sometimes 360 is better because, it's the viewer wants to be able to look around. Other times, it's better to be, normal video because, the photographer knows best as terms of what to show. So, yeah.
What I'm getting out of it is in a 360 world, every scene is its own story. And
Absolutely.
And then, that example of Slave Lake is, sure, Slave Lake is a story, but the smaller stories, which are equally important, are, which houses are damaged, do I have a home to go to? So everyone who had the means to access that 360 video, be it VR or otherwise, it sounds like they got valuable information out of it that a traditional story wouldn't have been able to deliver to them.
Absolutely. And the thing about that Slave Lake was that town, like 500 houses had burned down. Like it looked like a nuclear bomb had gone off. Like you stand there and you look in every direction and it's just devastation. And the thing was, with a single still image, a single normal 16:9 frame, you couldn't show that. You couldn't show that, in every direction it's like this because it's the frame. But in 360 you can show, and I would watch people watch that video and people would just look around and go, wow, it's all gone, and you could show that it was all gone. And I hate to glom on to a sad story, but I guess that's the typical journalist.
Well, that's your job. I mean, not necessarily for the sad story, but that's the point. You're capturing valuable information so other people can see it and possibly experience it.
Mm-hmm. So I did a number of 360 projects for the Edmonton Journal over the years, and we picked our battles. I had a 360 camera the whole time, and I wanted to pull it out and shoot every day. But like I said, there were so many things where I'd pull it out and it would be like, this isn't right. And also conversely, 5 years ago, even today, it takes so long to process 360. And it just scales up. 5 years ago, I was pulling my hair out, not sleeping for days to be able to turn around, essentially a 3K video. And, it's 5 years later, and now I'm still losing sleep and staying up nonstop to stitch a 10K video. It's the same. It just basically scales up. It doesn't get easier. It just, because what you want to keep going. And I'm hoping, a year or two from now, I'm doing 20K video because, the standards for these planetariums are incredibly high. And I'm fortunate the planetarium here in Edmonton is actually, it's currently 2K, but they're upgrading to 10K next year. So, and when I was at the Immersed summit in Denver, I would talk to a lot of other planetarium people, and one thing is a lot of the content that's currently being shown in planetarium and domes is CGI. It's all computer generated animation stuff, and so the thing about CGI is that it's perfect, right? You're creating it out of nothing, so of course every pixel is sharp and perfect. But when you get to shooting live action in the dome, first off, there's hardly anyone is doing live action in the dome, and secondly, because people's quality standards are so high with CGI that when you're projecting video, people are expecting it to be perfect. They want it to look. They want it to be 10K resolution. They want it to be sharp. And like I said, not just the pixels, because you can get 10K out of GoPros, but it's the sharpness of those pixels. It's the quality. It's the glass. The glass. The longer I've been doing this, the more I realize that that nothing changes. With the 360, all the same rules of normal video apply. It's not just the number of pixels; it's the quality of the pixels. And glass is more important than you think. When I started out in photography, when I thought about glass, I only thought about glass in terms of how wide it was. Right? It was just a tool to either zoom in or a tool to see wide. But the more you get into photography, or the deeper you get, the more you realize that glass has character. Glass has, contrast, sharpness, a feel to it. The glass can affect the image more than the sensor sometimes. So, anyways, that's a tangent.
Good stuff.
So basically, my uncompromising goal is to be able to do pixel perfect 10K in the dome, so that the video inside the planetarium is as sharp as if you're there. It looks like you're looking out a window. That's my goal. And remember, I said the ultimate goal is the holodeck. So if I can make it look like you're actually standing there, then I've succeeded.
Wonderful. So before we go, you've got a let's call it a prop to your right. Tell us about the rig behind you.
Oh, so this is the never-ending rig. Basically, basically, I build my own rigs. Oh, and by we, I mean me and Sam, because Sam's the mechanical engineer. Basically, we build our own rigs because I've learned over the years, one, I guess the engineer wants to build my own, but also just if you build your own rig, you know every piece of it, you understand what's in it, and most importantly, if something breaks, you know how to fix it. There are turnkey solutions out there, like the Ozo camera, but that camera's $60,000, and it has its uses, absolutely, but for $60,000, it's going to be outdated in a year.
Wait! I think the price dropped. I think it's $45,000 now.
Well, but 45 American. We're Canadians.
Okay, you're right. So that brings it back to 60.
Exactly. So for that, again, that camera is great and has its purpose. But for I guess the thing about me is I wouldn't want to buy it because it's going to be outdated in a year, and if it broke, I couldn't fix it. So anyways, this camera. And also you couldn't scale it. So basically the way we're building our camera is currently this configuration, there's six Sony A6300s with 6 Sigma fisheye lenses. And this, if all the cameras are in 4K, you get 8K, so 8,000, you get a little more than 8,000 by 4,000 pixels out of it. And just sharp. And also it shoots an S-Log, which is basically S-Log lets you push the color and contrast. It gives you more control for color. So 6 cameras, but we built the system so it's modular. So essentially, in fact, last night I was up for working on a project for a client who wants to do slow motion. So they want to be able to do a 360 slow motion at 120 frames a second. And so these cameras will shoot 120, but we'd have to reconfigure it with 8 cameras plus 1 up. So basically, the point of this is that we've made it so that if a client wants 8K, we can shoot with this. If a client wants 10K, we can take it apart and put it back together with a couple more cameras and shoot 10K. And if a client wants slow motion, we can take it apart and reconfigure it a different way to do slow motion. So it's kind of about being able to offer a full circle of solutions, and that a client comes. Forgive me, I have a cute wiener dog, and he's whining at the door. Hold on.
Yeah, that's okay.
Hold on. There we go.
So you got the 360 audio going too.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, this is my little wiener dog, Mr. Wolfertons.
Wolfertons, okay, good stuff.
Wolfertons, yeah. So anyways. So basically, I find with 360, because the projects, each project is very different, right? And each client has different needs. Sometimes a client may only want 360 they may only want it for Gear VR, in which case 4K is all you need. Other times it might be for the dome, in which case you need 10K. So we're able to reconfigure it. Hold on, the dog will not. So basically, we want to be able to reconfigure the camera to suit the client's needs. So yeah, if they want slow motion, we can build it this way. If you want 10K resolution, yes, we can do that. And working on the goal is to get to 20K resolution. And the reason for that is that remember I was saying these domes are 10K? Mm-hmm. Well, a dome is like a planetarium dome. Here's if you can see. So you have a circle, right? But a planetarium is half of that circle, right? below the circle, these are all the seats, right? And everyone's looking up into the half circle. So to get 10K, so essentially a 10K dome, to get a 10K, what's called a dome master, you actually need 20K equirectangular. If you were going to shoot the whole thing in 360, you would need 20K by 10,000K resolution of a sphere. And then you would cut that sphere in half to get 10K dome master. So that's the level to get to for these domes. And I will say to get there is going to be, I'm super excited to meet the challenge, but the data is ridiculous. The processing is ridiculous. The jump from 4K to 8K is just like the horsepower you need and the investment you have to make in, graphics cards and hard drives is ridiculous. But I always say that Moore's law will fix these problems. Every 2 years, computers get twice as fast for half the price. So I've always been trying to structure the company in a way where I'm always planning for Moore's law, and I'm always thinking like, well, this is really hard to do right now, but in 6 months, this might be easy, this might be doable, and try to attack also the computer science background. I believe that anything is possible, and it's all about scale. So, if you want 10K, yes, we can do it. If you want 20K, we'll figure out how to do it. But you have to figure out not just the camera, you have to figure out the computer side of things and how you're actually going to render it, because just the file sizes are tremendous, but the quality is just mwah.
Well, great. So, now, I know this is just the tip of the iceberg for you, and we're looking forward to welcoming you at Immersed in Toronto.
Yeah. Hey.
You're gonna have some stuff to show, yes?
Yeah, we're currently working on first. Remember, I was talking about the long-term productions.
Yeah.
So, working on our first feature-length show. When I say feature-length, it'll probably be 20 to 40 minutes. Most planetarium shows are about 20 to 40. Working on our first feature, and it in an incredibly short nutshell. Basically, it will take you on a journey across Canada to a number of sacred First Nations Aboriginal locations. Many of them are hidden in the middle of nowhere. You have to fly in on a plane and land on a lake and canoe in to get there. There's some the producer we're working with is brilliant, and he has spent 15 years building relationships with people to get access to these sites. And I could talk for hours about this thing. It's not just about what you see, it's going to be about what you hear, because it turns out that these special locations, these special places, many of these places, people have been coming to these places for thousands of years. There's one place actually here in Alberta, it's over 5,000 years old. It's called Canada. It's referred to as Canada's Stonehenge. It's over 5,000 years old. For thousands of years, people have been coming to these locations because they have some sort of a healing property to them. People say that it's like medicine to go to these places. And the thing is that it might not just be that it's located here. It's the fact that there's something special about this place. It's what you see, but it's also the sound. When the wind blows, the rocks sing, and music is medicine. And so the idea is to create a show in the dome that takes you on a journey where you not only see, but you hear what it's like to be in these places, and hopefully you have a special experience as if you were there. So wow. That's the very short version of what we're working on. Yeah, we'll
get the longer version at Immersed.
Yeah,
it's maybe cool. You could bring a rig or two so people could see your stuff.
Yes, yeah, I think we're going to have a booth set up there on the trade show day. So come by and emails Ryan@fullcirclevisuals.com and or just Google Ryan Jackson 360. But fullcirclevisuals.com is the website, and I've been blogging since 2002 at ryanjackson.ca. So you can go back and see all my stuff I've done for the journal. I blogged about projects I've done in 360, and I don't know. I'm really excited for the future. It's a good time.
Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you in October.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Ryan. We'll be back with more right after this. Well, there you have it. Thanks so much for visiting me in my messy basement. So just, don't forget, we really want to see you at Immersed 2016. You can learn more at getimmersed.com. If you want to be a guest in my messy basement, by all means, send us an email to neilsmessybasement@mtbs3d.com. On that note, I'm looking forward to catching up with you again next week.